What's up, everyone? David Bozell for America. I was talking to a Republican senator last Monday night, walking in the bowels of the Senate. One of the good guys. We were talking about the 2023 agenda, what might be in store for these guys if they were to win. And I said, do you remember the last thing that you ever defunded since you've been here? And he just stopped cold. We were walking in the bowels of the Senate. He just stopped. He thought about it. He thought about it. He thought about it. No. And I followed that up with it. I said, all right, can you remember anything you've ever defunded since you've been here? Crickets again. But the good news is, and that sort of indicative of it's just been our Achilles heel, right? As conservatives, as a movement, is defunding government, is getting government, the federal government precisely, off of our case, right? We've had a tremendous amount of success. We've talked about it here on the air before. And also at the state level, obviously President Trump had a tremendous amount of policy success, but government continued to grow and grow. But just in recent years, just as a minority in the federal government apparatus, we've had a ton of success out here in the states, right? Arizona just passed school choice across the board. We've overturned school boards from San Francisco to Texas to Miami. We helped install Glenn Youngkin in a blue state. We've overturned Roe v. Wade and returned that to the states. So there's been a lot done within the conservative movement framework that a lot of people should be proud of. But our one Achilles heel, no matter what we do, and it has been this way for the last 20 to 30 years, is actually shrinking government. And because the left operates with this built-in advantage that everything that they want within the federal government apparatus gets funded with a blank check, no questions asked. It's enabled them to go into all of these other facets of our lives, most notably corporations buying shareholder stock in order to infiltrate with ESG programs and those types of things. They ran Hollywood with no check and balance for years, but that was Hollywood's entertainment, okay. Then they basically infiltrated higher education, and then through the federal government, they've infiltrated lower education. And because they get what they want with the blank check, no questions asked, they've infiltrated the private sector. In order to reverse that, we've got to start gutting the federal government, okay? And there's a zillion things you could start with, right? The DOJ and its overreach, and what they did with the Catholic Father of Seven in Philadelphia was just, it's absurd. It's absurd. What they did in Mar-a-Lago, I think it's going to end up proving to be absurd and just a ridiculous overreach. So we got to start somewhere, but where do you start? There's an excuse not to start everywhere, except for one. And I want to thank Joe Biden for providing us this glide path. And that is this IRS 87,000 new agent bill that promises to do nothing more than essentially try to destroy conservatism and just audit us to death. Nobody wants the IRS expanded. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you were Paul Revere, one of the Boston Tea Partiers, and then looking at the United States 200 some odd years later, and you say, oh, by the way, I know you guys were throwing tea into the harbor to protest taxes, but we've decided to make the tax collection agency the second largest agency in government. Can you imagine what they must be thinking? But the IRS does provide Congress an opportunity to get their feet wet. Consider what I just mentioned with the senator who can't remember defunding anything. A lot of their staffs don't know what it's like. A lot of the members don't know what it's like. But the IRS bill, because it polls so poorly, because nobody wanted it other than just Biden out to get us all and destroy MAGA world, right? Because it is so low-hanging fruit, and it can be gutted if this new Congress has the want and the will. And I think they do. And the announcement by Congressman Jim Banks out of Indiana, who's turning out to be a superb leader of this stuff. The guy's a doer. It's that old saying, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. He's one of the 20% doing the work. He's put a bill out there which not only does it defund the IRS, bill that Biden and the Democrats just jammed down our throats last month. It also sticks a knife in and twists it, providing across-the-board tax deductions. It increases the standard deduction and makes it permanent for individuals beginning in fiscal year 2023, $14,000, $21,000 for heads of households in fiscal year 2023, $28,000 for families beginning also in 2023. So these would all increase by inflation every fiscal year. So it increases the standard deduction and makes them permanent. But most importantly, it enables Congress to sink their teeth into funding something. Kevin McCarthy, for all his warts, he's read the tea leaves here appropriately and has promised to make this the very first bill that the new House goes after. Okay? You mentioned that in Politico, that the very first bill that the new Congress will pass will be complete defunding of the IRS bill, which essentially is the bank's bill. They'll vote on the bank's bill. Now, these things have to be attached to must-pass legislation. I get that. I'm not naive, and neither are you. They just can't be show pony votes. We want to, but McConnell or Biden. Okay, and it could very well lead to some shutdown politics, because I can already hear Washington chirping. Are you really going to shut down the government over the IRS? Yes. A, for starters. B, the president does those things. The president's going to be the one to end up vetoing it, not Congress. But most importantly, to Republicans who fear shutdowns, are you really conceding a messaging war to Joe Biden? Are you really going to do that? Are you really going to concede that Joe Biden, Brandon, of all people, can and will beat you in a messaging war about government shutdowns? You can't possibly be considering that. And I don't think that they are, at least on the House side. So good on McCarthy for making this commitment. Good on the movement for making this a priority. Politically speaking, it's right up our alley. And one hopes that by gutting this IRS bill quickly and swiftly and with authority, to borrow a Cartman for South Park, that the other 3- and 4-letter agencies wise up. Like, uh-oh, I got to be on my P's and Q's. And then hopefully this new breed of Republican Congress starts to like it. Oh, wow, we can gut this and we can cut that. That's the first domino that needs to fall. They need to have some success gutting something. Remember at the top, I said a United States senator who's one of us, who's been in this fight for a long time, could not even remember defunding anything since he's been here. Anything. Couldn't name a thing. And that is the Achilles heel of our cause. And the IRS bill and the 87,000 new agents and the battery of audits that those new agents promised to put us through. It is the perfect opportunity to wet your beak, guys. Perfect opportunity to sink your teeth into actually defunding and gutting the federal government. It is Congress's responsibility to be the chief steward of taxpayer resources. Nobody asked for this stupid thing. Under no circumstances can Republicans fund it. Not one penny of it. The messaging is simple. Just be honest with your voters. We can't afford it would be where I would start. We can't afford an 87,000 new agent increase in the IRS. That's for starters. Not to mention, even according to Congress itself, the Joint Committee on Taxation, only 4 to 9% of the revenue that these 87,000 new agents will raise will be coming from anyone making over $500,000 a year. So they ain't going to be going after a whole lot of the rich folk. In fact, they also go on to say that over 50% of the revenue that these 87,000 new agents will raise will come from taxpayers making $50,000 or less. Nobody wants it. Save that crowd the trouble of being harassed by the Internal Revenue Service. Republicans have committed to making that their first vote, and I commend them for it. We should support them, but they've got to attach it to must-pass legislation to make it stick, and it's our job between now and then to make that happen. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Take it easy.